Here we are in beautiful Vallejo, California. There was a plum seedling growing here. It's not a plum anymore, exactly. I cut all the branches off and grafted some cherries on it. Black Republican. Grafted about a month ago. So from this point to the base of the sapling, it's myrobalan plum. This portion right here is Adara plum, which is graft compatible with both plums and sweet cherries. So it's a bridge between the Black Republican cherry that's on the top. So there's your Black Republican cherry, there's Adara, and there's the wild myrobalan plum. This will grow to be a nice large tree, a cherry tree, providing I don't let any of these lower branches grow that are below this graft union where the cherry has been inserted. You can see right here it's got a nice little bud coming out. So that's going to be a cherry tree. And the mother of that tree is probably, most likely, this. Below a eucalyptus tree, there is a myrobalan plum growing, and it produces very large numbers of very small astringent and sour plum fruits. Not something that you would normally want to eat. I suppose you can make jelly or jam out of it, but not great. This was also another seedling of that same myrobalan plum. And what I've done here is I've grafted some interspecific hybrid plums onto it. This is Flavor King Pluot. And this year I added some more. This is, what does it say? Flavor Finale. So if the name is any indication of its fruiting time, it'll be the final fruit of the season. A large old myrobalan plum which had really poor fruit, very small and poor flavor. Probably just a wild seedling or possibly an abandoned fruit tree where the rootstock grew out. And I've grafted all kinds of different stuff on here. This was another myrobalan plum. I chopped all the branches off of it and grafted it initially with some really old cultivars from about 100 years ago that were developed by Luther Burbank. Most of the top here is called Apex. It's thought to be a cross between an apricot and a plum. And we've got elephant heart plum on here, and Burbank plum, and Lee Cott aprium. What else? Cotton candy aprium. This here was another myrobalan plum, and I cut it down all the way to the ground until it was nothing but a little stump, and then it threw up a bunch of suckers off the base, and I grafted a few of them with European plums. So we have sugar prune plum here on the left, And then we have French 707 prune, and then golden transparent gauge in the back, which is a little bit late to leaf out here. It's being a European plum, it's adapted for colder climates, so it doesn't bloom as early. Otherwise, it would never bear fruit. This is a Fuyu persimmon that was grown from a seed. The fruit was bought at a supermarket by my wife. She saved the seed, put it in a pot, and it grew. And I don't know if it's male or female, so I started grafting onto it. This is a Seijo persimmon that's been grafted here on this limb. Chocolate persimmon, grafted actually right here is the graft union, and it goes up here. So that's going to be the chocolate persimmon. And then this year I just put an ungodly number of different varieties on it. The rough lemon with kumquat growing on it. So I picked all the fruit the other day, so you can't see any ripe fruit. Here's a immature rough lemon. And it looks like the flowers are beginning, flower buds are beginning to swell. My wife took a cutting of a neighbor's tree, put it in a pot, and it grew. And a few years later, we have a large tree. And then we visited a friend, and they had some kumquats. And I bud grafted them onto the lemon tree. So this whole section from here to the top, this is all kumquat, and this will produce kumquat fruit. The rest of the tree produces rough lemons. So that's the lemon kumquat tree. The neighbor had a bunch of wild plums growing behind the fence line, and I grafted them last year. Just hacked off the trees at the top of the fence and inserted a little stick, and now it's grown into a pretty good sized tree. That's just 1 year of growth. This is where they were grafted. This is called Flavor King Pluot, interspecific hybrid, mostly plum parentage, and this thing will be absolutely loaded with dark purple fruits. Nice. This is a nectarine tree that I did not spray this year, so it has a serious case of peach leaf curl disease. And I'm probably not going to keep this fruit tree because I don't like spraying all that copper in the garden, because it's very toxic to fungal organisms like beneficial fungi in the soil. So I'm probably going to cut this tree off somewhere near the base of the trunk, maybe right here, maybe up here somewhere a little higher, and then graft a different variety on it that's not so susceptible to this disease. If you look at this one little tiny branch right here that is flowering, it has leaves, if I can catch them in the camera, there they are, that do not catch this disease. But I lost the tag, so I don't know what I grafted there, which is a problem. So I'm going to have to find some other resistant varieties. Let's see. Looks like I grafted Raritan Rose Peach onto this nectarine, and it's growing some leaves that don't seem to be affected either. So maybe I'll put some Raritan Rose on there. This tree was had the same problem, and so I just hacked it back and I grafted it with Indian Free Peach this year. And I just made these grafts recently, and they're beginning to grow. So it's good. So this tree is going to be converted to Indian Free Peach, which is resistant to that peach leaf curl. There's a little sucker coming out of the bottom, and I grafted it with a French Petite European plum. Peach roots, plum on top. See over here we got a few little projects going on. I bought some plum rootstock at the Scion Exchange this year, and using that Adara again. Here's a Burbank cherry, double grafted simultaneously with plum on the bottom, cherry on top. Burbank cherry, really old variety. This is early purple, another heirloom variety, double graft with plum rootstock, Adara interstem, and it looks like it's growing on top. And what do we have here? Another plum roots with Adara interstem and Co's transparent cherry. And this baby's growing too. These are all double grafts. The bottom was bare root plant, and I grafted this piece of Adara and the piece of cherry simultaneously. What do we have here? We have Potomac pear that was grafted this year. It's growing. Geneva Mirabelle from last year. Ayers pear, grafted last year, and then this year I put Maricourt. It's from University of Tennessee, fire blight resistant pear. That should start growing here in the next week or so. Here's another one from University of Tennessee, carrot pear, another fire blight resistant pear. And what do we have here? Another French Geneva Mirabelle. A couple more, they're just starting to bloom. Here's another, this is American Mirabelle. Mirabelle is a small, sweet French plum. Geneva Mirabelle from Geneva Research Center in New York, I believe. This was a stock from a Jefferson hazelnut tree, and it needed a pollinator, so I grafted Theta from University of Oregon, their research program. This is another Jefferson grafted with Theta. Over here, this looks like a mushroom bed. This is shredded trees, tree bark, and we got a little animal activity here. So these are called wine cap mushrooms. This is my first attempt at growing a bed of wine caps. And this is the mycelium network that's growing underneath of these. And this will start making some really big, delicious mushrooms in a few months. I've just got it covered now because there was a chicken running around here, and we have a lot of wild turkeys that like to scratch everything and tear up the ground. Plum with a Adara interstem and a Lapins cherry on top. Myrobalan plum, a root sucker, grafted with Adara last year. It grew a large little Adara plum tree, and I chopped it all up and used it for scion wood for other projects. And this was the stump that was left. And I grafted 3 different types of cherries on the tips. So on this tree we're going to have Goodness Stone, Burbank cherry, and Lambert cherry. Here's another Myrobalan plum tree. And we have Co's transparent cherry with an Adara interstem. Another Co's transparent with Adara interstem. These are starting to grow. Santa Rosa plum. Cherry tree, Lapins cherry. Grafted a coral cherry on the end this year. This was all a big thicket here. I just cleared most of this out. You can save half the tree and reuse it. This tree was intertwined with the fence, and I cut off part of it and was able to save this piece of the trunk. Cut it off here at about 6.5 feet off the ground and grafted Weeping Santa Rosa. So this is growing out pretty nicely here. This was, let's see, that was grafted, that was only about a week and a half ago. And it's already got buds showing nicely. These are bark grafts. Little birthday cake there. And this will make a weeping form, like a big fountain coming out of the top of this trunk, which should be pretty cool. Behind it you see this really tall one here. This is probably a good 10 feet tall, maybe more than 10 feet. And I took the top off and I just grafted it. I don't know if I can get this in the camera here. It's got a bunch of other stuff behind it, but you can see the little sticks up in there. They're just starting to push little buds out. And that's a Weeping Santa Rosa also. That'll be a really nice tree if that takes. It should. And we got some figs and apples and other little experiments down here. Red Rayburn apple on type of M111 rootstock. These are a bunch of apple seedlings, which I use for rootstock. And what do we have here? We got Northern Spy, Ambrosia, Jana Gold, Shizuke, Yellow Delicious, a little bit of everything. Violet de Bordeaux, figs grown from some little cuttings I picked up. Little baby figs. This tree came with the house. It was more of a weed when I got it, but I turned it into a tree shape. It suckers profusely. And we have a good Breba crop. This is the crop of figs that grows on last year's wood. This is the early crop. The main crop will start growing on the limbs that come out of the new growth. That'll be many months from now, toward the end of the summer. So all these little figs, these are Breba crop. And these will be very large figs, but not quite as sweet as the main crop. This is Osborne Prolific Fig. I'll probably not keep this because it's a pretty flavorless fig. Maybe graft it over. We have a giant Fuyu tree. It's taken many years to produce, but it does produce now, and it makes for very large Fuyu persimmons. And I put a couple other varieties on here. We have Giro persimmon and chocolate persimmon grafted on here. Here's another one I found in the thicket. Half of the tree is dead from being intertwined. It grew up into this fence, and the fence is embedded in the wood, and it killed it. It just absolutely destroyed it. And half the trunk was still alive, and I pulled the wires out and grafted a bridge across here, across the damaged portion. And that healed in last year, so that'll probably fix that side of the tree. This year I grafted the Brooks cherry with the Dara interstem. It's growing. What do we have here? A Van cherry with an Adara interstem, and another Brooks with an Adara. And then the top of the tree is all Flavor King from last year. This was all grafted last year. This was just a little stick. And now from last year it grew all this wood up here. And it's flowering really nicely. So these flowers will be fruit. This was a bigger one. This is probably the biggest myrobalan that I've worked. Well, the one on the left is, I'm not sure if it's the same root system. This may be another seedling here. Anyway, I cut both of these off. You can see where I cut this one right here. Up here, I see the graft union right there. And I grafted that last year. You can see this is the top of the old piece of scion wood. So that was about the size of a pencil. So that's what I grafted right there. And it was that diameter. And last summer it grew all this was last summer's growth, all the way up there. I don't know if you can see that, but that's, I don't know, 12 feet from that little pencil size stump. And then on the bottom I grafted some European plum. Now on the bigger tree, this is Logan Peach with an Adara inner stem. Don't know if this is going to work. It's a test, but the buds are beginning to swell, so it may live. And this lost the label. I think this is Autumn Jade Plum. In the back, we have Flavor Supreme, grafted last year. Actually, the whole tree on the top, this is all Flavor Supreme that was grafted last year. And that probably goes up a good 16 feet to the top. All from little pencil-sized scions grafted last year. And it's already finished flowering, so hopefully there'll be some fruit on there. We'll see. What else do we have on here? I put another piece of Adara with a nectarine. The scion looks really dry. Probably not going to make it. It might. You never know. And we have some golden transparent gauge grafted back here. Those are European plums. English plums. Flavorosa. With an Autumn Jade plum grafted to the top this year. This is a D'Anjou pear. This pear had a partner, which was a suckle pear right here, but it died from fire blight. Killed it all the way to the ground. I cut it with a chainsaw right at the base. And I don't know if you can still see the stump or not. Let me see if I can get this camera down here. Oh, there we go. That's the stump right there. And after I cut it, little shoots started coming out of the ground. And I grafted 3 of the shoots. There must have been a dozen of them coming out. And I saved 3 and grafted them with 3 different kinds of pears. Biuri Fokori. The great thing about that is it makes a good pollination partner for the D'Anjou. And I've got a Warren pear and is flowering at the same time as the D'Anjou. So now they'll pollinate each other and we'll get lots of fruit. 2 years ago I had only 1 or 2 fruit off of this tree. Last year I had hundreds. I thought I was going to break the tree because this little Biuri Fokori pollinated it. Dapple Dandy on a myrobalan rootstock. Hollywood plum. Purplish leaf plum and purple fruits. Flavor Queen Pluot. A couple of French plums. Mirabelle de Nancy and Perfume of September. And a whole bunch of different English plums. All these are on the myrobalan wild plum roots. I just hacked all these trees down and grafted to the stumps. Cambridge gauge. Gosh, I can't even remember all these names. And can't read the tags. Do not use a Sharpie when you make your tags because it fades in the sun. So here's another seedling. Another random seed fell in the ground and started growing, and I hacked the top off and use the Adara interstem with a early purple. This cherry is growing on a plum. This is hazelnut. Some people say that hazelnuts cannot be grafted very easily, but I've had great success this year. It looks like here's York on a yam hill. The bottom of this tree is yam hill. That's York, it's growing. This is called Theta. This is called Epsilon. They're all growing. And the reason I need to graft these is because on its own this tree will not produce any nuts because it cannot self-pollinate. And I need these other varieties so that it will be able to pollinate. And here's the other hazelnut that I have, and I thought that this one would pollinate the bigger tree, but it, as you can see, it leaves out a lot later, and it does not pollinate the other tree because the bloom time does not overlap. So here's a graft. This is York. This tree is called Jefferson, the main tree, and this limb is York Theta. All these varieties were developed in the Pacific Northwest. Back here we had another thicket of myrobalan plums that I thinned out and saved just a few and grafted them. So we've got Flavor Queen and Hollywood Plum mixed in here, and Flavorosa, Flavor King, Blue-Eyed. A bunch of Maribels here on this one tree. I think we got 3 different kinds on there. This is a Hychia persimmon tree, fairly new addition. This is just vegetable gardens. Swiss chard grows on its own here. Then we have root crop. This is Yakan. This will produce a whole lot of, they call it ground apple. Tastes kind of like a apple, but you dig it up out of the ground. Here's a plum tree that was grown from a cutting. My wife took a cutting off one of the neighbor's trees and put it in a pot, and it grew. And then I grafted it with many different types of plums, so this has probably got 8 different types of plums on it, and that's probably Asian plum. And then we have our artichokes, which are beginning to produce very nicely. And we have a bunch of little apple trees in here. There was an old almond tree here. Well, it's still here. I cut it down, but it keeps growing out of the stump. This was a sucker coming out of the root from the stump, and I cut it right here, and I grafted this Adara plum onto this almond, and it grows. This is the graft union. It was a bark graft. I saved 3 branches of the Adara, and I cut everything else off, and I've grafted 3 different types of sweet cherries on here. So here we have coral cherry, and the buds are just beginning to swell. Don't know if it'll make it or not. Worth a try though. Then we have Black Republican, and I'm pretty sure this guy's gonna make it. I can see green on those buds. You never know with the scions when you're getting them for free. And we have a Brooks cherry, and this guy is much further along than the other 2, and I'd say it has good odds. And for the portion of the tree that's still almond, I grafted some other almonds on it. The original tree had very bitter almonds, which can actually be poison, so I wasn't interested in eating those. So I'm grafting known varieties on it. I've got Nonpareil and Missioned almond, and it looks like I got one little bud of Mission that's growing, so that one bud could end up being a whole tree. You never know. So I'm going to have sweet cherries and almonds on the same tree. And who knows, maybe I'll add some peaches and nectarines. This was supposed to be a street, but they never built it, which is good for me. Oh, before we go across the street, I got a few little blueberries here growing in planters, since they need acidic soil. They haven't leafed out yet, but they have a lot of blooms on them, and a lot of little fruits. There's another blueberry starting to bloom. They're just coming out of dormancy, so they're just beginning to leaf out. This one's got a few baby fruits on it. And another one. Dwarf mandarin. Little pomegranate from a cutting. Some sad little dragon fruits that need attention. What else? Oh, what's this? This was some random seedling of a myrobalan plum, and I put Howard's Miracle on it this year, and it looks like it's growing miraculously. So this street, this was the city's right-of-way, but they deeded most of it back to the adjacent property owners. It looks like somebody surreptitiously planted something over here. I wonder what this could be. Oh, look at this. It's an Ayer's pear. That's an old southern favorite. Amazing. Just happened to appear here on this old abandoned piece of land. Well, isn't that nice? That's amazing. What else? Oh, I see something else. A Potomac pear. Up near San Francisco. How did that get up here? I thought Potomac, isn't that Virginia somewhere? Indian tribe or something? Potomac River? Huh. What else could be on this land? That looks just like a moonglow pear. Yep, that's moonglow. A flavor finale pluot. Wow. Imagine that. Just growing out here in this wasteland. And Flavorella. Interesting. I wonder what that is. Guess I'll find out in a couple of years. Well, that's the spring orchard tour in beautiful Vallejo, California.